Hello, good evening, and welcome to International Flavor. I'm Samuel Trapp. You're listening to damradio.com, and I'm excited to be here today. I am, again, sadly, this is a recorded show. I don't want to risk not having a show. I may actually do a show tonight live, but if not, this is going to be the show. It's being recorded. It's approximately, in fact, it's exactly 9 a.m. in the city of Armenia, Colombia, which is where I am located. Never heard of Armenia, Colombia, but it's in central location to where I wish to be. It's very mountainous. I did a small little video showing this place and my initial impressions of it upon awakening this morning and coming out to the car to record this video. I like how quiet it gets in here. It doesn't seem to echo like other places. And I did some reading this morning. I've been checking some things out. This country just reminds me of any other community in the United States. People doing the same thing. I'm sitting here in a parking lot watching a lady get her child out of her little mini SUV. She's pulling out a baby stroller. She's getting the child out. She's dressed as an American woman would dress. I'm looking at nice apartment buildings in this mountainous community that are modern. They're probably a little smaller than ours. They don't live like we live, but apartments are my typical way for viewing the world, going to other countries and renting an apartment for an Airbnb and then exploring the country this a little bit. And like I said yesterday, I try to rent a car and go these places. I strongly encourage other people to do the same and get away from the standard that is America and the nonsense they pump up our rear ends in the media. I read a few end of year opinion pieces which I wanted to go over with you today from different sources. As you know, I like them, and everything that I tell you is not for anything other than, if it's my opinion, I'll tell you it's my opinion, and I have plenty of those opinions. But if I just gather opinions from other people and spread them out to you, that is because I want you to realize, and I know you do, I don't think that anybody that would listen to me would be moron. I hope not anyway, but there are other opinions out there, and these opinions are what form your own opinions. These alternative sources of fact are good places where to get information about the world as it is and the world as people want you to think it is. And I talked a little bit yesterday, and I spoke to I happened to run into a couple of foreign people, and of course, people not from Colombia typically, and you see a lot of European people that travel, and as soon as you tell them that you're an American, I swear to God, they have a different opinion of you. They really do. They think we live in some ridiculous bubble, and we do. That we don't realize things about the world that everybody else realizes. That, for example, what's going on in Israel and Gaza is anything other than what's supposed to be happening in Israel and Gaza with mass murdering of people on one side or the other. Now, all I'm saying, and this is my opinion, is take your news from other sources, because if you get it from other sources, if you travel to other places, honestly, there's very little possibility that you will remain as committed to the fact that the U.S. is doing what the U.S. ought to be doing on the international stage. Even from just showing Colombia as nothing but a backwards country with nothing but evil drug lords is one thing. Russia always being shown as a backward, gray horror story. Met a kid from Prague yesterday, and he said that he seemed somewhat embarrassed, which I don't know why he would be. Prague's a beautiful city, and at least it was when I was there. And I told him, I said, well, I went to Prague. I said I went to Prague in 91, 92. Don't remember exactly the year that I was in Prague, but Prague was, you could tell it was a beautiful, historic city. And I only spent a day and a half there. It was overnight. And in a rental car. I shouldn't have taken there, apparently. You weren't allowed to take rental cars to Prague because they ended up getting stolen. But the people were great. Was the 90s, of course, so you had to be pretty careful because Europe was in turmoil, much as it is today. And a new generation of young people back in the 90s. Well, this kid wasn't even born then. He was under the age of 30. I think he said he was born in late 80s, early 90s, so he had no idea. And he's traveled, but he seemed embarrassed to have been from Prague. And I said, I hate to say this. I said, I haven't been back to Prague. The only time I was there was in 91. And I said, and probably the thing that struck me the most, and maybe it was a bad thing to say, was how gray it was. And he goes, oh, it's getting better now. And I said, well, I didn't think it was bad then. It's just a comment of how I'm sure, Prague has a wonderful history, centuries. And the founding of Prague, was, I don't remember, 1300s, if I remember correctly. And Prague's been around for a while, and they have some serious history. Of course, it was a little on the gray side, and so was Moscow. But Moscow's not that way now, and neither is Russia. And by the way, neither is Colombia. So traveling yesterday in Colombia, wanted to give you a little bit of update on that, because this is more of a as Sam travels kind of a statement when you get out to see places. I would love support for the show. I started I want to travel. The BRICS conference is in Brazil this year. I'll definitely be there. And there's other places that I want to go. Like I said, this is country number 53 for me, and I verified that number last night. I went and did a quick count, but I'm gonna have to recount because I found a country I'd never even heard of before. I found several countries I'd never heard of before. Apparently there's a country that was Seychelles, I think it's called, islands in the east of Africa that were liberated in the 90s from was it 90s or 80s from British rule, a set of islands on the east side of Africa that I want to go. A set of island, kind of like the Virgin Islands, kind of the British controlled a lot of islands all over the world, and they're just kingdom, here it is. We control this, and nobody gets to control it themselves. They go in, steal the resources just like we do, and that's probably the biggest eye opener for me in my travels. Is and it gives me a much different opinion of the world. And I'm glad people listen to me. I hope that you do. It's not my job to change your opinion. This isn't even a job. This is something I do as a hobby, that I try to get my show correct for people. I hope that people listen to me, but it's not the end of the world if people decide that they hate my show and don't want to listen. I would prefer that you did like my show and that you gave me some improvement points on how I could improve my show. I have no problem with that. I know that I tend to ramble a little bit, and some of what I feel are my best shows are when people are on there and we're holding a conversation. But most of the time it's just providing information. It does make it a little bit difficult to when I'm traveling, because the Wi-Fi, I have to record this because there's no Wi-Fi to upload that is a certainty. Those are somewhat problems, and I can upload it on my data stream, but there's usually not enough. And yesterday, that you can use in a day or something, or whatever I'm limited in. So sometimes I have to wait until I get on a good solid Wi-Fi to upload my content, and so that there are some technological downfalls to doing a show this way, and I know about those sort of things. If you wish to criticize me or my show, I'm open to criticism of both me and my show, and but I want people to listen, and I want people to understand that I'm doing it from the point of view of hopefully just providing information and an alternative for you to consider, like I do on many things. And I've always been a pretty open and upfront sort of guy, and I'm upfront with my opinions. I'm upfront with how I think. I think that everybody's opinion should be honored. I don't think I've said that enough. That it's not my job to give you an opinion. It's my job, if I have one, to help you find ways to develop your own opinion, because your opinion is just as important as mine. And that is why I think what I do is important. I do this in Russian as well, and my opinion in Russian is equally as valid as anybody else's going out there. And I think I have a pretty broad basis to create my opinion. I'm not doing it in a vacuum. That some opinions that you see of international events are given by people who don't know enough about what's going on internationally. I have a great deal of respect for one of my brothers in particular, who may have even traveled a little bit more than me, and he's been in some extremely high and responsible positions, and done some fantastic things for large corporations. And I'd like to get on and get him on and interview him one time, because he and I used to have some great discussions when we both lived in Qatar at the same time. And it was I always had my own opinions anyway, because of my own background in arms control and in the military, and speaking a foreign language rather well, and getting sources that aren't just prepped for United States content. So I would like to do a little bit more of that kind of thing. But anyway, today's show, last night I reviewed some things, and I wanted to, I might read the whole thing to you, and you're gonna think it's weird, and it is a little bit weird, because this girl is obviously, in my opinion, kind of an America hater. I'm not an America hater. She's an American. She writes for Al Jazeera, and her age makes it grow up. But I think the piece is important. And she wrote a piece for Al Jazeera, and it's called an opinion piece, and they let her publish it. And I checked her out a little bit online. She seems a very interesting person, and with a different opinion. And this opinion is probably a little more extreme than mine would be, but I want to tell you what it is. And it came from Al Jazeera English, which is the Arabic world's answer to Voice of America. And I tell you, sometimes I get my content from different places, and there's, you know how at the end of the year a lot of people write opinion pieces on what's going on with the world. This has a little bit of things for you to find interesting, but any opinions I give out and read that I don't tell you are my own, they're not my own. I'm just passing out information to you, and you can agree. And some of this, what you read from her, might piss you off. And in my opinion, this is my opinion. It's because she's so young, and she might know a little bit more, but she's definitely been around a little bit, because I checked it out. And her opinion is this. The article is called "How a Sudanese Refugee Made My Christmas Less Pessimistic." Well, the title of that got me going, because I especially after what I told you yesterday on my show, is that I too am somewhat pessimistic about whether Trump can come in and change things, because I see reality. And Trump, I think Trump sees reality too, and he's a strong personage, and there's but he's doing somewhat of the same things that the government always does. Elon Musk is extremely popular right now, right? Well, there are some pieces out there in the world that say that Trump is doing exactly the same thing that the left did all over the world, Europe, the Middle East, everywhere, that they bring in all these billionaires as if their opinions are more important than our own. And we're somehow glorifying Elon Musk because he makes a lot of money, and Donald Trump because he makes a lot of money. Now, I'm in on that. I'm all for that, because if you can put a bomb under the bus seat of the U.S. governments, trust me, I'm a big fan if you can correct any of that. But is that necessarily the right approach? I sure hope they are tempered enough to do the correct thing. And so you see a lot of parallels in what's going on now and what has gone on previously. I mean, where did these billionaires, Soros and any other billionaire you want to pick, how come they get to pick how we think? I like the fact that it's changing, but I'm not so sure I like that it's another billionaire telling us what to do. Another billionaire who's got billions. He's got other stuff to do. I suppose you could say some of the same things about Soros. When you have a lot of money, suddenly you want to change the world. Okay, well, change the world for the rest of us. And, I could go on that topic for a long time, but I won't, because I wanted to get through this opinion piece, because it's I think, an interesting take on the world from another opinion. And I always give my opinions. Let's give somebody else's. But remember, this is not my opinion, and I'm not telling you to believe this or not. I'm just going to read it in its entirety. The title is "A Sudanese Refugee Made My Christmas Less Pessimistic." It's a decent article. She's well spoken when she writes. Her name is Belen Fernandez, and I hope I said that name correctly. And the subtitle is, "This year, a chance encounter with a fellow pessimist helped me find some Christmas magic in the imperial capital." Okay, now see, so we're throwing out titles already. The imperial capital turns out to be Washington, D.C., the capital of the empire, of course. And here, and then there's a photo. The people says, "People hug near the state Christmas tree outside the White House in Washington, D.C., as the Capitol readies for a Christmas holiday on December 6th. So she took the photo on December 6th. And here's the article. The article was published on Christmas Day, by the way, just so you know. And it was published in Al Jazeera English version, which you can get online, aljazeera.com/opinions. As a child growing up in the 1980s in Washington, D.C., Christmas was a time when the usual monotony of my Catholic school existence gave way to indescribable magic. Well, that's part of the problem, too. If you're in a Catholic school, you're going to get one extreme. And a lot of people tend to go the other way when they get to one extreme. It goes the other direction. Maybe I'm the same, because I grew up Mormon, and I'm not so sure that was. I had a little bit of issue with that, but in general, I'm still a believer. I mean, I don't fault the way I grew. My problems were a little bit more. What do you call it? A little bit more arithmetic. Mine are, well, if this is true, then what? We're a little bit more on the logical side, which we'll go into another day. But at any rate, it was a different way to grow up, especially in a family of 12 kids. 11 because one had passed away. Okay, gave way to indescribable. It was not so much the presence as the sense that reality had been temporarily suspended and replaced by something far more invigorating, which I suppose is part of the reason I insisted on believing in Santa Claus until I was 10 years old. Of course, mine was a relatively privileged childhood in the United States Capitol, an imperial headquarters that continues this day to embody the racism and social inequality. I don't like how that's written, that governs life in the so-called land of the free. While I knew vaguely of such domestic issues growing up, I knew even less of my country's contributions to global suffering. In my birth year, and here's a key for you, in my birth year of 1982, for example, Washington had greenlit the Israeli invasion of Lebanon that killed tens of thousands of people. So hers is from that point of view. And many a times on Arabic opinion pieces, you will find anti-Israeli. Closer to home, the decade of the 1980s was characterized by the U.S. backing of massive right-wing slaughter in Central America, all in the noble pursuit of making the world safer for capitalism. And that I do agree with. We did some damage in South America. That the tedium of Catholic school was my greatest earthly complaint meant that I was doing much better than a whole lot of folks, something that became even clearer when I abandoned the U.S. in 2003 at the age of 21 in favor of an itinerant lifestyle that brought me into contact with the fallout of U.S. misdeeds from Colombia to Vietnam. I am now 42, and I did not have high hopes for Christmas when in mid-December I flew from Mexico to D.C., where my parents had returned to live, following their own lengthy stretch abroad shortly before my father's death last year. This year, it was not just my dad's absence that seemed to preemptively put a damper on festivities. The potential for indescribable magic would seem to have been fairly soundly obliterated by the dismal terrestrial state of affairs and the U.S.-backed Israeli genocide, again, we're back on Israel, that continues to rage in the Gaza Strip, where almost the entire population has been forcibly displaced. Now, I agree with a lot of the thought process in that. What is going on over there is a horror story, and you can't believe what we are being told, but I think most people are starting to realize it too. Something has, if we're the world's policemen, we're pretty selective about where we choose to police. That is my opinion. The story continues. Meanwhile, America's conversion of Christmas into a giant traffic jam of Amazon delivery trucks merely drives home the all-consuming presence of apocalyptic capitalism and the reduction of humanity to an infinite soul-sucking series of economic transactions. I particularly like that sentence. And yet, ironically, my first inkling of holiday cheer here in D.C. was triggered by just such a transaction-based interaction, when a Sudanese driver working for a rideshare company gave me a hug. Hailing from the Sudanese capital of Khartoum, and I wonder how true this is, truthfully. It seems pretty random that she would have picked up on something, but it does happen. And I'll tell you a little bit about my own feelings from there. And then she's telling of the event that happened to her. Hailing from the Sudanese capital of Khartoum, the man, we'll call him Al-Safi, had registered his enthusiasm at the sight of my Free Palestine sweatshirt when he arrived to pick me up. Also 42, he had worked as a human rights lawyer in Sudan, itself no stranger to systematic killing and mass forced displacement prior to fleeing the country in 2013 after one too many arrest and torture sessions. Upon getting to the United States, however, Al-Safi had determined that the American dream was not at all what it was cracked up to be. Now, where have you heard that before? You heard that from me. Not only did he regularly find himself on the receiving end of overtly racist comportment, he had also quickly tired of the oppressive consumerism that has become a substitute for life itself. He, too, was now plotting his exit from the country. Needless to say, we had much to talk about, so she found a fellow pessimist. Days before Christmas, Al-Safi invited me to dinner at a low-key Ethiopian restaurant in Arlington, Virginia. And in Arlington, you can find some great restaurants, international. Just across the bridge from D.C. I'd spent a month in Ethiopia in 2016. Al-Safi had spent several months there in 2013 in between fleeing Sudan and relocating to the United States. Over Ethiopian Habesha beer and injera, I don't know what that is, bearing mounds of lentil and collard greens, I heard some of the details of Al-Safi's Sudanese carceral experience. During one of his detentions, he was blindfolded and beaten while his torturers continuously commanded him to move to the corner of the room. He stumbled around in search of the corner to no avail. It was funny, he remarked to me with a laugh. When they took the blindfold off, I saw there were no corners in the room at all. It was round. Al-Safi was not a fan of driving, but had to put in long hours in order to support his family in Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, where they had sought refuge from Sudan's ongoing violence. On the drive back to my mother's place in D.C., he pointed out key landmarks in a geography he by now knew far better than I. The Pentagon building, the Watergate Hotel, the patch of tents housing homeless persons whom Al-Safi informed me had been forcibly displaced in the interest of security, when in July, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had descended upon the U.S. Capitol to make his case for genocide. There was something paradoxically uplifting about our shared pessimism, and the evening ended with another hug in front of my mom's apartment, the lobby of which now hosted a gigantic Christmas tree and an ever-multiplying heap of Amazon delivery boxes. Al-Safi went his way, and I was left with the reminder that even in a capitalist-conquered society, there are still humans out there, which might be just as magical as it gets. Now, the views expressed in this article are the author's own and do not reflect Al Jazeera's editorial stance, is written at the bottom. And I would put my own on that. The views expressed in this article are the author's own, hers, not mine, and do not expressly reflect Damn Radio's editorial stance or my own. I'm putting that out there because sometimes it's interesting to listen to other points of view, and she certainly has one. A small side on her little blurb that tells who she is. Belén Fernandez, Al Jazeera columnist. Belén Fernandez is the author of Inside Siglo XXI, locked up in Mexico's largest immigration detention center. Checkpoint Zippo-Lite, quarantine in a small place. Exile, Rejecting America and Finding the World, these are her books. Martyrs Never Die, travels through South Lebanon. And Imperial Messenger, Thomas Friedman at work. She is contributing editor at Jacobin magazine and has written for the New York Times, London Review of Books blog, Current Affairs, and the Middle East Eye, among numerous other publications. Now, the only reason I read that to you is because she has an opposing point of view, and those point of views are out there. And sometimes, and this is probably the lawyer in me, you find those things that that back your own worldview the least, and read them just to find out how other people are thinking. And you do this not because you want to believe in it, but because you want to have your own opinion, because you want to find out. Well, maybe sometimes you read that and there's a grain of truth. One of the biggest grain of truth from this that I want to tell you about is my own experience talking to foreign people. Everybody knows I just blab all the time, and I've always got something to say about a lot of things. I try to develop my opinion and come up with it. And you know, you ever have a battle of wits with an unarmed person where they're just so stupid you don't even wish to talk to them, where they don't know anything. And then when they open their mouths, you discover that they're a complete moron. And most of the time you just smile and And, I honor their ability to be an idiot if they wish to be. But when they give out opinions that they have zero basis in fact for, that they come up with, they haven't been anywhere, they haven't done anything, they haven't seen anything, they don't leave their room, and yet they come up with these opinions. And unfortunately, there are too many of them on YouTube even now. But it's always interesting to listen to various opinions, and including mine. Heck, you might think I'm one of the idiots that I just described that come up with it. But the important part of her article, think about this, is that a guy from Sudan, if this is true, a guy from Sudan came to America following the American dream, And he turns into, unfortunately, what a lot of them turn into, because you can make good money doing it, turns into an Uber driver. He turns into whatever, Lyft, whoever it was, taxi cab driver. That's what they used to do in New York. Everybody was a taxi cab driver and worked for one guy who took half of their money every day and made himself wealthy, and they collected what little bit they could and sent the money on. Saw the same thing in Qatar. There were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Bangladeshis, of Indian nationals living in small quarters, making okay money, treated poor, not treated poorly. Everybody's treated pretty reasonably in Qatar, and they had their own section of the city with 300,000-400,000 people, Indians, Pakistanis. Great area to go and get some great Indian food. And you could go, but you'd go and meet those people. Similar in America, they are less than we are. And this is, they are less. Here's a guy, as she said in his article, he practiced law in Sudan, comes over here, you have to redo and go be a lawyer somewhere. It's like if I wanted to be a lawyer in another country, I probably could, because I have an American education, and a lot of places will take that, although it depends on the country, of course. And him coming over here, there's no way that people are going to let a dude from Sudan be a lawyer here in America without re-going to school. But that's a choice you make when you move to another country. And the important part of what he represents to that article is that she talked with a guy who came for the American dream and is planning on leaving. Now, except for the Ukrainians that are currently getting a ton of money from the U.S. government under the U4U program. It doesn't matter who you are. All you got to do is claim you're leaving a war-torn country. Even if you're a young man of working age, you come over here and you get free money from the U.S. government. It's nonsensical. These people from Sudan weren't getting that. I guarantee you that. People from Mexico aren't escaping here and getting free money. It's a lot harder for them. But if you're a Ukrainian, you can come over here and immediately start getting a Social Security. Check out the U4U program online and see what you think of that. And I'm not against Ukrainians. I don't want people to think I'm against Ukrainians. I'm against people coming here and we immediately fund them. That's what I'm against. And you want to come here and be a part of well, I'm not in America right now, but you want to come to America and be part of the American dream? Great. Make an effort to do it. It's getting harder and harder. There's a Ukrainian woman who, get this, she escapes Ukraine, abandons her home, abandons her apartment, abandons her everything about it, brings her kids over here because she wants more, but starts in Germany. And in Germany, they have rules, okay? In Germany, they were requiring her, okay? And this is why she left and came to America, okay? She doesn't speak a word of English, didn't speak a word of German, has no desire to do so, doesn't want to go learn a foreign language. She wants to come to a place where there are tons of Ukrainians. And there are several places where you can come, and there are tons of Ukrainians. There's several places in Florida, Chicago, name any big city. Heck, in Missouri there's one, in Sedalia, right? And I'm not against them being there. I'm not against it. But just like I said years and years and years ago, you want to come to a country, assimilate, for God's sake. Assimilate. Don't have your kids assimilate. You assimilate. Okay, if I move to Colombia, and I already talked about this yesterday, I need to start learning some Spanish. There's been too many Spanish places, and I'm going Brazil. I got to learn the basics and at least learn to get by, because sometimes your Wi-Fi doesn't work in your Reverso Context, which is my preferred program for translation of voice and of type. Sometimes it doesn't work as well, and people are very patient, and at least you're trying, and at least there's the ability to do so these days. But if you're going to move to a country, freaking learn the language, okay? It's a minimum. And in Germany, guess what? It's required. In order to become a citizen, in order to get somewhere, you're going to have to learn these language. Why do you think there's such upheaval? Because these people are moving in to foreign countries and they don't want to do the basics. Okay? In America, you're supposedly supposed to get by before you can get your passport. You have to do a test in English on American history, American government, it's not very long. There's a potential 100 questions you got to learn how to answer, and allegedly in English. Yeah, they certainly move that a little bit, or they waffle on those standards, because there's a ton, I mean millions of people that live here that don't speak English, do not want to, okay? But in Germany, they don't allow that. In America, you can speak whatever you want, and you'll still get government money for doing so. So she comes over here, just like she was in Germany. She got free money, on the social media, social platforms, and everywhere in Europe is given money for people displaced by the war. And I still have very, very mixed feelings about that. I don't think they should be getting it, frankly. If we're not giving money to Americans who are battling poverty and some of the same things, I don't think that is what the American dream is all about. The lady doesn't want to work. That is what the interview revealed. She doesn't want to work. She wants to come to the U.S. She's pretty young too. She's nowhere close to 50. She doesn't want to work, doesn't want to find a man, wants to come over, raise her kids, bring her kids who are in the 16, 17, 18 in a war-torn nation. You can bring them over here or to America and you avoid going to war. She paid to get out. She abandoned everything she did. And she gets free social money from the government to raise her kids in America. And since they're minors, they get free money, okay? And so she gets enough to support her family, and she doesn't want to work. She wants to be a mother at home. Is that America? Is that the American dream we're talking about? And these people wish to stay. But if you took away the social safety net, would they? If you required them to speak English, would they? She would not, because she already left Germany under that same scenario. We are doing some things in America that if most Americans knew about them, they would be up in arms. This border opening of the border is completely a BS. This is a world-changing event by the Obama-Biden types of people. I don't even know how to, and I'm not anti anyone. I'm pro everyone. If you wish to come to America, great. Let's have some rules for how you get here. I want to know more about your country. I would love to sit in a cafe in America and run into people from foreign countries and speak to them about what they, tell me about your country. Tell me about how your country celebrates New Year's Eve. What happens there? How does that equate to what I believe? Tell me about your religion. Tell me. I want to know. I'm a curious person. Okay. Some people aren't. You ain't an American. Get out. You ain't an American. Go on. And why are we funding you? Now I feel that way about a lot of them. Obviously, this girl who wrote the article that I reviewed for you has similar feelings. But now there's people who, like the Sudanese guy in the article, want to leave America because the American dream isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Well, it's not for Americans either. It's the American dream gives you the potential to do something, allegedly, if the government doesn't pull the rug out from under you, as it did in my case. But here's a big but. My American dream has always been the ability or the desire to travel to other countries and see other things. You could ask any family member from my family and any ex-wife. You could ask anybody and they would all tell you that Sam, all he really wanted to do was accumulate enough in resources so that from his 50s to his 70s, before he got too old to do it, he could travel the world. I don't have the money I had to do it before because, the Missouri government chooses to rip the legs out from under you if you are anti-system in any way. They will target you until you die. Now, I helped him in that respect in a lot of ways, but not in the expectation that I would be taken out by a corrupt government official, which I was. And that guy's corrupt as a day, as long as are quite a few others, which I would love to get into some more. Ask me my story on that nonsense. But the American dream should be given to us on the basis of equality of possibility. You shouldn't have a government that picks winners and losers. And in Missouri, that's definitely the case. And in the U.S. government, that is definitely the case. If they wish to target you, they will. And only the strongest and most rich can survive. And that happens on the local level too. There are people who are treated differently for criminal infractions. For the same criminal infractions, there are people who go to prison and other people do not, depending upon the special sign that the lawyer gives to the prosecutor. Or you have a stack of cases that has 50 cases. This lawyer has 50 cases. And he can make some special deals that other people cannot make for those special clients that pay a huge amount of money to him. He can make certain headway. And I was starting to come into contact with that when I was taken out by the Missouri bar, when you bump up against these. But I was never one of those people who believed in that system. In fact, people would come to me and say, well, I'm told that if you do this, if you hire this particular attorney in this particular jurisdiction, this is what you get, because there's an underground of how this takes place. And I never believed it. I do now, but I never believed it then, that lawyers were given, and obviously they were, they're given preferential case treatment. Of course, if you're going against a big dog that's a great lawyer, by the way, like Travis Noble for a DWI or any licensing affair, if you go up against a guy who is well known for being a bulldog and for taking care of his clients, of course that client gets a little bit of deference by the court and by the prosecutor's office. I remember him doing my DWI case twice in front of Judge Collier in Camden County back in 2009, the first time, mistrial, hung jury, which was a great, I wasn't guilty, I'll never admit to being guilty of that DWI, because I wasn't. And I was targeted for that, and he did a very good job. But I'm a lawyer, so people that people want to attack a boy. If they could take me down at the knees, trust me, they were going to. And because I was on the way up, and when he appeared in the courtroom, Judge Collier gave him a great amount of deference, and in part because he was extremely good and knew his shit better than the judge did. That I feel pretty comfortable saying. And I like Judge Collier, by the way. I thought he was a reasonably good judge, and he was always good to me. And we had some run-ins, but he was still good to me. And our run-ins were more of I never thought he hated me, or I wouldn't have let him be my judge in the case. I would have done something to get rid of him. And I thought, that he was a reasonably fair judge. He was a little on the odd side, and I won't go into any more than that. And we had our run-ins personally a couple of times, but so what? They were just run-ins, and disputes over God knows what. I don't even remember what they were, but I remember we had a few disputes back in the beginning. And but I thought he was a reasonably good judge. Okay. And anyway, none of that matters. I've kind of strayed a bit from the topic of what people tend to believe in their opinions. Once again, because I'm not following my guidebook here, I've tended to go off on a little bit of a trip, like this Bullion Fernandez. But your opinions are based upon what's happened to you in life. And your opinions come from there. And the American dream being taken from people is what happened to me. There ain't no way I should be without a law license these days. There ain't no freaking way. And I will not bow down and kiss the rear end of Sam Phillips, nor will I bow and kiss the rings of 9 judges who didn't even bother to read my case in the U.S. Supreme Court. And any other court, no judge has given it a fair review. None of them. And they choose to ignore the law. Why? Because I'm a lawyer and I should know better. Because I'm a lawyer and I shouldn't be here. Because I'm a lawyer and you don't buck the system. The system needs to be blown up in some respects. And I truly hope that's what happens. You want to know where my opinion comes from, similar to what got me not excited but interested in this Belén Fernandez article in Al Jazeera, was because my Christmas and New Year's is pretty pessimistic. And I wanted to find out, maybe it is a fellow a pessimist that I wanted to review it. And in fact, there are a lot of pessimists out there. I'm not alone. There are some other people that are pessimists. But that doesn't mean our opinions are any less valuable than anyone else's. So that is what I challenge each of you to do, is to go and read some articles like this from this pessimist that put out. There are a couple other ones that I read. Here's another opinion, also from Al Jazeera. Donald Trump and the Great Panama Canal Tantrum. Now, I've told you I disagree with what he's saying about the Panama Canal and the reasons behind it. And I also think that the reasons behind it are just more of the same. Put pressure on China and Russia, and that's how we go through the Panama Canal. Downplay what's going on in the Huatulco area of Mexico, where they're building that trans-Mexico corridor for shipping goods, however many levels of track there are going to be that cross the entire southern part of Mexico, and 2 huge ports on either end, funded basically mostly by the Chinese, which you don't hear a lot about. They're trying to create alternatives to the Panama Canal that China and Russia can use that other people can take. And that includes, by the way, the North Pole. Let's see. Surviving 2024 in Gaza. Netanyahu's first, U.S. second, Biden's Netanyahu first, U.S. second strategy is a total disaster. These are opinion particles. Jimmy Carter, found this one interesting. Jimmy Carter, the father of Arab-Israeli normalization. Here's the subtext to that. With the Camp David Accords, remember those? The late U.S. president set in motion the gradual Arab abandonment of the Palestinian cause. It's absolutely true that if the Palestinians were not abandoned by the rest of the Arab world, Israel wouldn't have been able to slaughter them like they have. Let's see. The world should not forget Afghanistan. How about that? So their opinions are, of course, they're separate and anti-American generally on Al Jazeera. When burning hospitals are no longer news. That's an interesting one because Israel's been blowing up hospitals and we hear nothing about it. Just like Ukrainian sources, they're conducting all kinds of terror against civilians and killing people, civilians, and we're hearing very little about it. Like the story I reported to you yesterday. Sometimes it is important to take stuff that you might not necessarily agree with, and get out and see the world yourself. By the way, there's nothing like that I can't believe. But that's it from the Al Jazeera world today. I'm not gonna. I don't read a whole lot of opinion pieces except toward the end of the year. I tend to want to get a year-long story. Here's a historic first, right? This is 2 chess players are crowned the World Blitz champions. Now, and my first thought was, well, they either both really suck or they're both incredible. And here it is. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this story because it was kind of interesting. They had to relax the standards, so the one guy, his name is Magnus Carlsen, so that he could come to the competition at all, because he doesn't want to wear the proper attire for playing chess. Apparently is some kind of a formal wear, and he likes to wear jeans, and that wasn't, so he was just going to not go. And they relaxed the standards because he's one of the best in the world. So if you are the best, you can make things happen for yourself. But here it is. Historic first. 2 chess players crowned World Blitz champions. The historic solution occurred after Magnus Carlsen and Ian Nepomniachtchi, if I said that right, Nepomniachtchi. Oh, I wonder where he's from. I wonder if he's, because Nepom, it means don't remember in Russian. Maybe he's Eastern European. Let's see. They played 7 games that ended without a victor. Grandmasters Magnus Carlsen and Ian Nepomniachtchi were jointly awarded the World Blitz Championship 2024 title on Wednesday. The first ever decision to share the top spot was made after 7 games without an ultimate winner. The unprecedented solution was proposed by Carlsen after 3 consecutive draws and sudden death tiebreakers. Sudden death in chess involves fast-paced games with strict time controls to determine a winner in tied matches. The 5-time reigning world champion from Norway, he's a Norwegian guy, dominated the start of the final, winning the first 2 games and putting pressure on Nepomniachtchi. Yep, he is a Russian. However, the Russian Grandmaster managed to make a strong comeback by winning the next 2 games and evening the score at 2-2. Video shared by the International Chess Federation via X shows Carlsen proposing the idea to Nepomniachtchi, to which Nepomniachtchi agreed. With the opponent shaking hands, history has been written today, the World Chess Governing Body said, declaring that it has 2 champions. The decision sparked criticism from U.S. Grandmaster Hans Niemann, who had accused FIDE chess of being controlled by a single player for the second time within a week. FIDE goes from forfeiting Carlsen to creating an entirely new rule, forfeiting him because he wasn't going to show up because they told him he couldn't wear jeans. Seems like the regulatory body of chess has no intention of being unbiased. They seem to only care about what one player thinks, Niemann said in an indignant post on X. The comment apparently referred to Carlsen being disqualified from the World Blitz Championship in New York City last week after officials told him he could not wear jeans to compete. He swiftly returned to the tournament after FIDE relaxed the dress code rule. Oops, looks like I was a little bit... he wasn't going to be allowed to compete in any prize. FIDE President Arkady Dvorkovich said in a statement that he would let World Blitz Championship tournament official consider allowing appropriate jeans with a jacket and other elegant minor deviations from the dress code. Commenting on the decision to split the title between Carlsen and Nepomniachtchi, American-Canadian woman FIDE master Alexandra Bortz denounced the move, saying that chess was getting soft. Well, chess club officials, looks like you can do it. There's some great comments over here. Great comments. I love how people get, I understand fatigue is a thing and then it stops being about skill and becomes about stamina. Maybe they should have just rested and finished at some other date. It's not like you need a lot of production value for this. Well, that's a good point. Anyway, there's some great stories on there. Here's one. Ukrainians. And this is coming from RT, the Russian opinion paper, right? Ukrainians are holding a torchlit march to honor World War II Nazi collaborators. Crowds in Lviv carried nationalist flags and shouted slogans in tribute to Stepan Bandera. Now, if you know who Bandera is, which the article does cover a little bit, they are when Russians talk about Nazism, they're talking about this, and there are an enormous amount of Ukrainians who back Nazism and back Stepan Bandera, and it's a huge thing. And Russia talked about getting rid of Nazism, make Ukraine neutral and non-NATO, and quit destroying ethnic Russians like Ukrainians have been. And nobody wants us to believe this stuff, but it truly exists. But in America, we bury our heads in the sand in the sand and ignore it. And like I said multiple times, I believe that our new fearless leader might be the same as the old fearless leader when it comes to burying his head in the sand regarding things that are uncomfortable for Americans to listen to, like Ukrainians or Nazis, or there are a good number of them that are fighting this war from a Nazi point of view, including, by the way, Zelensky, or at least not combating it. He's fallen victim to, he will not fight these people because they're too powerful in Ukraine, and he needs their support in order to stay in power. So he doesn't fight the Banderovцы. He doesn't disallow them wearing SS symbols and swastikas on their uniforms for certain regiments and people. And it's frankly an insult to anybody, including any Ukrainian who fought against Hitler in World War II. We all go from the common truth that Hitler was a bad guy. Doesn't that mean that if you're a Nazi like Bandera was, and these people that are supporting Bandera, doesn't that equate to similar activity? I don't judge people on one opinion. I don't judge people. I try not to judge people at all. But this could be a bit much, but apparently in the West, we okay genocide on one side, but not the other. Depends on who you are, whether you get away with genocide or not. And if you're Bandera, and a Bandera supporting Zelensky, genocide of an entire nation, Russian, is okay. Just because they live on your side of the border doesn't mean they're not Russians. That'd be like killing all Ukrainians that live in America because they're Ukrainians, or all Mexicans, or all Arabs, or hating these type of people just because of who they are, which I do not support. But they do. And here's the article. Ukrainians hold torchlit march to honor World War II Nazi collaborator. Too much of this going around, by the way, even in Canadian Parliament several months ago. Hundreds of Ukrainians marched through the center of Lviv, bearing torches, flares, and red and black neo-Nazi flags on New Year's Day. The event was organized to honor World War II-era nationalist leader and Nazi collaborator Stepan Bandera's birthday. Videos circulating on social media on Wednesday show a square in western Ukrainian city, and this seems to be far more in the western areas of Ukraine, which also supported Nazism. There was a huge group, Bandera included, that during World War II that fought against the Soviet Union on the side of the Nazis, on the side of the Germans, including Stepan Bandera. Videos circulating on social media Wednesday show a square in the western Ukrainian city lit up with red flares as men in camouflage marched and shout Slava Ukraini. Now, Slava Ukraine is followed by Smert Ostalnim, and that is death to everyone else. So Slava Ukraina, they always forget to mention that's how the greeting ends. That's or not the saying. The pogovorka is what it's called. And so this pogovorka goes Slava Ukraini, Smert Ostalnim, death, grace to or glory to Ukraine, death to everyone else. And that they always forget to mention, and that does get me a little bit bothered because I don't like it. When they say that, because it means something if you leave it out. Maybe it's not a lie, certainly an error of omission, correct? The article continues. Video, blah, 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 blah. In one video, a group of marchers are seen carrying Ukrainian flags, the red and black flags of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, and the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, as well as a battle standard with Bandera's face emblazoned on the red and black. Who also was red and black? The swastika. According to Ukrainian outlet Strana, the march was preceded by a concert and prayer near a monument dedicated to the nationalist figure. Bandera, a member of the OUN militant wing, was one of the leaders of the UPA during World War II. They allied with the invading Nazi Germans to conduct massacres of Poles, Jews, Russians, and Ukrainians they accused of collaborating with the Soviets. Excuse me. Former Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko declared Bandera and the UPA nationalist heroes in 2010. This was reaffirmed by the government installed following the U.S.-backed coup in 2014. This is all true. Since then, Ukrainian nationalists have held torchlit marches every January to mark Bandera's birthday, calling him the father of the nation. The OUN's rallying cry and its red and black flag was adopted by neo-Nazi groups in modern Ukraine. Moscow has accused the current Ukrainian government of embracing Nazi ideology and allowing the West to turn their country into an enemy and a threat to Russia. The Kremlin has listed the denazification of Ukraine as one of the key objectives of its military operation, as well as demilitarization and neutrality. Those three things I just said. And there are some and listen to some of these. Here's some comments for you. Hail, hail, Bandera. And then it looks to be in Polish. Zelensky is our savior, must be Zelensky, is our savior, and Bandera is our founder. How about that for a comment? Western Ukraine has no good identity, and that is why it should not exist. Denazification is not yet completed. Keep going, Russia. Here's a comment. The original meaning and intent of National Socialism has been distorted. If I have my facts straight, Hitler said he was a pacifist, but had to go into Poland because of moral obligation because of the massacre of Germans that was happening at that time. This is a far cry from what current-day neo-Nazis are. U.S. and EU love this, says Bohos. Doofy Bracket says, Russia will wipe out Bandera's followers. The disease of hatred will be banished by Putin's commitment to the foundations of the special operation. Here's one by a DR. Fact is, the whole regime in Kiev are Jews, and that since the coup in 2014. In this light, this article is a bit surrealistic. Okay, if they're Jews, why are they afraid to do anything about this? And they are, in fact. But Zelensky has been condemned by the Jewish state for these activities quite a few times as well. And here you go. Bandera was born Jewish, and then his family converted to Greco-Catholicism. Greco-Catholic? I think Greco is probably. There's two E's, but I'm not sure this should be there. His mother's name was Polish Jew name Beleka. Father was an alcoholic family name Moishe. Name Bandera in Yiddish means brothel. As a kid, he was thrown out of schools because he was homosexual perversion. He got his name Bandera, brothel, because his father forced his mother into prostitution. Bandera was a Jewish homosexual pedophile, and the entire German presence in the Soviet communist territory was locked up and freed by Stalin's guns in 1945. Those are interesting comments. Your observation is valid. I would expect better from RT, Putin, and the Russians. And then another guy disagrees. His mother was Miroslava Glodzinska, daughter to a priest, and his father was a priest and politician called Andrei Mikhailovich Bandera. His father was Michael Blecki. Seems like Andrei is the one that changed the name to Polish surname Bandera. It means flag in Spanish. He was a member of the Ukraine National Rada and Western Ukraine People's Republic. Change the surname name was probably due to politics. God knows what the real truth is, but it is absolutely certain that Bandera supported the Nazi regime against his own people in Ukraine way back when. Anyway, some very interesting articles that are out there today. They have their commentary on some of our terrorist things, and I always disliked the word terrorism, and I don't know why. If it's a crime, it's a crime, but I always think that terrorism should be left for something along the scales of these mass murders at the World Trade Center, things of that nature. Everybody wants to call what's happening in America as terrorism, and if they can link them together, I agree. The planes blowing up if anything's going to make me afraid to travel, it's that. Okay? I won't travel by ship because I'm afraid of sharks and it takes too long. Prefer to travel by air because usually it's pretty quick, and when I get on the ground, I take a car. So it's kind of selfish to not want this terrorist nonsense that's going on around the world. How many plane crashes have there been in the last 2 weeks? 5, 6? It's a good number. How many mass slaughters? There was one in New York, one in New Orleans. There was one in the German capital. They're occurring in Amsterdam. There's people dying out there on mass levels that are not good for people. I have here's what we know so far about the terrorist attack, if you want to call it a terrorist attack, which in New Orleans. And I haven't studied the guy. I don't have an opinion whether it's terrorism or just some idiot that is out there acting on his own. Most of these people are lost a-holes anyway. The New Year's car ramming and shooting left 15 dead and dozens injured as the authorities search for accomplices. How the attack unfolded, I'm not going to read about any of that. An ISIS-inspired U.S. Army veteran, Shamsuddin Jabbar, the suspect in the attack, was a U.S. Army veteran who served from 2007 to 2015 on active duty and continued in the Army Reserve until 2020. He was deployed to Afghanistan from 2009 and 2010, held the rank of staff sergeant at the time of his discharge. An Islamic State, IS, formerly ISIS, flag was found in Jabbar's vehicle, prompting federal investigators to classify the incident as a potential terrorist attack. Officials revealed that Jabbar converted to Islam within the last year and may have been radicalized online. Mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS and expressed a desire to kill, said Joe Biden in his address to the nation. However, no direct communication between Jabbar and ISIS has been confirmed. Jabbar, a native of Beaumont, Texas, had no significant criminal record, but reportedly exhibited erratic behavior in recent months. I feel sad for people like this, that there's so little in their own lives. They have to destroy others' lives to compensate. I dislike it. Another article I wanted to get to on Nazism is from the EU. EU state to open Nazi collaborator archive to the public. This according to The Guardian. Documents scheduled for release contain data on more than 400,000 Dutch people, the paper reports. A trove of data on suspected World War II Nazi collaborators in the Netherlands is scheduled to become accessible to the public on Thursday. We'll see what kind of turmoil this event causes, The Guardian has reported. Materials will only be accessible in physical form due to the Dutch authorities' opposition to their publication online, the paper said, adding that this could change in the future. The Central Archives of the Special Jurisdiction Court, established by the Allies after the liberation of the Netherlands, will be open starting in January 2025, exactly 80 years after the end of World War II. Under the National Archive rules, the Archive's website states, despite providing only limited access to these materials, the CABR has already become the most consulted war archive in the Netherlands, according to the website. The documents, including witness reports, diaries, Dutch Fascist Party membership cards, medical records, court judgments, pardon pleas, and pictures, contain data on around 425,000 people, according to the British newspaper. The archives host a total of 30 million pages of documents, which were previously only accessible to researchers as well as people mentioned in the papers and their direct descendants. Does this seem like extremely confrontational to anybody else? Are we guilty of the sins of our fathers? Are we? My father was a good man. Maybe he had some sins that I'm unfamiliar with. God forbid if my kids are ever treated poorly because of my sins and crimes, my evil tendencies as an attorney torn down by the state of Missouri. God forbid they should have to suffer because of me. But when you open up, and this is Sam's own opinion again, if you open up these records to anybody that wants to have a look at them, the intent could be to come out and say, oh, look, Donald Trump had somebody from his family was Nazi. Speak to this one, Mr. President, or anyone else on the planet. Are we guilty? I don't know, but that's exactly what this is going to open up. I'm not saying you should keep them quiet, but sometimes things are better left unsaid. Let's see. Initially, the Dutch government had planned to make the archive available online. However, this plan was delayed after concerns that were raised by Dutch Data Protection Authority, which warned that online publication could violate privacy laws. As a result, the government will make the archive accessible on-site at the National Archives in The Hague. Researchers and suspects' relatives will also gain access to the digitalized part of the archive, containing around a quarter of all the documents. According to Dutch Cultural Minister Eppo Bruins, the archive will not be indexable by search engines such as Google, although The Guardian claimed that it could eventually be all searchable. The developments were reportedly met with a mixed response among the suspects' descendants. Some, like 74-year-old Connie, expressed discomfort at the idea that her family history could be exposed. I don't know what could come out of it eventually if people Google our surname, she is quoted as saying. Others, like her sister Mika, were more open to learning about their ancestors' past. Researchers welcome the decision. Making this open is an important step, Johannes Huwing ten Kat, an emeritus professor of Holocaust studies at Amsterdam University, said. Others called for restraint in interpreting the data. It is important to look at this archive carefully. Martin Eickhoff, the head of the Dutch NIOD, Institute for War, Holocaust and Genocide Studies, told The Guardian, if a text is misleading, people become critical about the source, he said, adding that the archive also contains so many personal documents, this affects people enormously. According to Eickhoff, less than 15% of suspects in the Netherlands were convicted by tribunals and special courts, and 2/3 avoided any form of punishment entirely. Around 75% of the Dutch pre-war Jewish population, more than 102,000 people, were murdered by the Nazis, according to data published by The Guardian. Now, I wanted to read that article because exactly of what it says. In America, we have demonized our founding fathers and torn down their statues, removed their names from grade schools and high schools, and just torn them apart because it was a different world 200 years ago, 300 years ago. It was a completely different world when people owned slaves. But before you condemn anybody, put yourself in anybody's shoes from that time. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not for slavery. I'm not for people trying to defend their families from the government, the Nazi government, from becoming a card-carrying member of something because they weren't brave enough to stand up to a government. Are you brave enough to stand up to your own government? A lot of people aren't. A lot of people don't want the heartache and the trouble for their own families. I stand up to the Missouri government. I stand up to the U.S. government. Look what it's gotten me, okay? Look what it has gotten me. It's gotten me targeted by some very powerful people, destroyed by very powerful people, my family's future destroyed by very powerful people. I don't believe, nor will I ever believe, that I deserved what I got. I did in the punishment phase. But in the coming back phase in Missouri, they allow people to come back from anything. Who's to say, if as long as your name's not Samuel Trapp and you don't have a particular government official on a vendetta against you and a Supreme Court too passive and too needy of what goes on in the Missouri bar to defend anyone. Just because they're lawyers. You can't screw with the legal system. And Sam Trapp represents screwing with the legal system and telling you the truth about the legal system. They don't want the truth about the legal system. Nobody's prepared to believe it yet. They believe everything else about corrupt government, but they don't believe it from the judiciary. Why? Because they're supposed to be the good guys. The fact is, they're not. Okay? And so, if you're looking at these articles or these documents of people's families in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, everywhere, in The Hague, that they get to see these documents, I say you should be extremely cautious with what you choose to believe about any person who, like the article said, show some caution. Only 15% of these people were ever convicted. And they had to convict somebody. They're the government. They had to convict people of being collaborators with the Nazis. But here are your choices. Okay, and we didn't live at that time. Here are your choices, slave owner. Here are your choices, people who want to free all the slaves. You go up against all the power of all the government everywhere in your little small town in, I don't know, somewhere Georgia, outside of Atlanta. Call it Savannah, Georgia. Big slaveholding plantation estate. Powerful people control the government, control the governor, control everybody. And here are you, some small time person that doesn't want to be a sharecropper picking cotton and manages somehow to buy his own few slaves and get something, or doesn't protest loudly against slave ownership. For everybody that they want to accuse of owning slaves, why don't they go back and trace the roots of every family member of anybody that lived in the area, anybody from Georgia that didn't stand up and have printed documents that say we hate slavery and there shouldn't be slavery. Find you some of those people, the passive resistors who didn't like it but didn't do anything about it. Okay, are we going to condemn those people? Are we going to condemn the people that lived at the time of Hitler when everyone was being killed, entire families are being killed? They were against it, but were hopeful that it wasn't going to destroy their own family and were doing anything they could to protect it. Does that justify it? I don't know, but maybe it should lend you to think a little less, I don't know what, with a little less condemning nature of people who weren't there in the first place, like us, who had to deal with things as they were happening at the time. And how far back do we go? Do we go back to anybody from Egypt and hating them because they held the Jewish people or the tribes of Israel in bondage under Pharaoh way back when, and Moses had to lead them out? Or the people that we condemn, all the people that believed in slavery way back then? How far does this go? That we're going to condemn people for history. I don't know. I'm against that sort of thing. I've said enough on that topic. I had one or two other articles that I wanted to get to today. And again, sorry I couldn't take calls today. I am taking the safety measure of recording this on my travels in Colombia, in the city of Armenia. Very odd. And traveling here, I did want to tell you a little bit about my travels here. This could end the show on my way, because in America, all we see when people discuss Colombia, any of your neighbors, it happened to me at least twice, that you tell them you're going to Colombia, anybody says, "Oh my God, are you going to be careful?" Yes. Are you? Oh my God, what are you going to do? You're going to be killed. Isn't it anything but drug lords there? Well, no, there appear to be more than drug lords here. I went to a restaurant last night. It was fantastic. The girl was so helpful. She was trying to help, and it was hard to read. They don't have English menus. They don't have menus written in English. And my internet wasn't working. You couldn't use Google Translate, take a picture of it, and have it translate so you can read what the menu says and know what it says. It wasn't working. I was without technology sitting here, and without technology all the way here. I paid 7 tolls on the way here. And 7 tolls to get here on a paid road. Very, very nice. It was a decent road. The roads are decent here. And it was a 6-hour drive to get here, a total of about 200 miles, but it winds through some serious mountains, and the beauty was incredible. And the roads were decent. And there were a few places where, and they're trying to widen all of these to 2-3 lanes. These are brand new roadways. And by the way, some of the efforts in Colombia are funded by the Chinese Road and Belts initiatives. You know, the Colombian passport is one of the best passports in the world as far as travel internationally. You know, there's a ton of Colombians fighting in Ukraine right now. They leave and they go fight in Ukraine. But they're not anti-Russian. There's plenty of Russians here too. Everywhere you go, there's people speaking Russian. Yesterday, like I said, eating in some of the cafes. A guy from Prague was there. Another kid was from Mexico. There are people traveling from all over the world. Talked about my New Year's Eve night with people from the Dominican Republic coming to Colombia. Why are Americans afraid to come to Colombia? Tell you what, if you come here, you might not be. As I say that and probably get attacked today. No, I'm kidding. But it's a beautiful country, just like so many others. I'm looking across the way here, and there's a person out riding a horse. There appears to be a row of corn, and there's a small farm across the way. And then on the other side, there's an enormous set of mountains. I'm up in the mountains. There's some beautiful apartment complexes, one of which I'm residing in. This is not the horror story that America reports, and much of the world is not as it's reported in Hollywood. I know people know that, but every time you see anything from the Middle East, what do they show you? Do they show you downtown Doha, which is the capital of Qatar, which puts a lot of the world to shame with how beautiful it is? The teeming shopping malls and the big money projects everywhere. Do they show you the port cities with all these rich people and their yachts and how beautiful it is? No, when we show those people in America, those people are all criminals. They're all people that are somehow less. And they're not less. They're good people, and they're people just like in Colombia. I told you about the lady I watched getting her baby out of her little SUV. I've seen several other vehicles come and go in here, all with families, all with people. The average child number of children in Colombia right now, 3. They're growing. They're booming. The global South, rest of the U.S., rest of the world ignores. We want to dominate the global South. We don't want a cooperative framework with them. We don't want it. And for whatever reason, our globalist tendencies mean we should be able to come here, take over everything, right? Take over cocoa plantation. How did the U.S. get Hawaii? How? How did Hawaii become the 51st or the 50th state? The U.S. took it, put who as the very first governor? Dole Pineapple, baby. They took that guy and made him the governor, basically awarded him the state of Hawaii. We took it. We took Hawaii as our own plantation for pineapple. That's why we took it. Stole it from the people that lived there, the Hawaiians that lived there at first. Americans, a lot of them don't know that story. A lot of people don't know the story. Go read up on it. It was an interesting story. That you don't hear about it in high school either. It's not. We're supposed to big government. We love big government. We love American big government, which are protecting those Hawaiian nationals, those Hawaiian backwards people. We protected them. How? We threw the government at them. We threw the U.S. government at them. We put Dole Pineapple as our 52nd state. Why do I keep saying that? As our 50th state, we put them in. I wonder if I'm going nuts, in all seriousness. And don't answer that question, by the way. But I've noticed, and maybe some doctor could listen to me, because I tend to misread words. What is up with that? So I'm misreading some words, and there could be a little bit of, I don't know what, a little bit of a problem in the brain of Samuel. I'm getting it reviewed, by the way. It isn't extremely concerning to me, but I am checking it out. And I do notice that I am misplacing words sometimes. Now, I've always done it when it comes to speaking in Russian and in English. And a lot of times, not always, but I remember ex-wife number 2 telling me years and years ago, and it was pretty funny because you'd be running around the house, and I was in the Army at the time, and I spoke Russian far more than I spoke English at the time because I was with Russians all day, and that's who I spoke with. And these scientists and arms inspectors, I enjoyed speaking to them in Russian. That's how my Russian got pretty good. And I would run around at home trying to think of something when I'm especially when I'm running late or something like that, and I'd go, man, I can't find. And she's like, what can't you find? What are you trying to find? I don't know the kluchi, and she's going, what? I don't know what the kluchi are. I was like, keys. You have to, and she would, and those things actually did happen. Sometimes when you immerse yourself in a language, you do forget sometimes the words, and it happens to me still. I do speak Russian very, very frequently, and it's sometimes leads. But I'm noticing now that even when I'm reading in English, every once in a while I will miss a word or flub it up somehow, and that is something I think I need to have a look at. I'm gonna go have that checked out. Anyway, it's probably nothing major anyhow, and I do tend to speak too much, and when you do speak as much as I do, you flub up your words a little bit, especially when you speak sometimes at a very quick pace and do it. Well, folks, that is what we're going to end the show on today, and I wanted to encourage you to, of course, continue to view and listen to damradio.com and our wonderful package of programs. J.R. Hartenstein, my hat is off to you, as usual, for what you are creating and for allowing me to be a big part of it. I enjoy doing my show. I hope to continue for a very long time spouting off my discontent with all things government related. JR is a far more positive person. I am a little bit more on the pessimistic side, and I appreciate that he allows me the freedom to say the things that I say. We are controlled by no one except ourselves here at Damn Radio. My thoughts and my opinions are my own. I hope you enjoy them and continue to listen to them. If you'd ever like to battle corruption in the state of Missouri, I'm your ally, and I could point you where to some bones are buried. And it would be very nice if we could fix some of that. So, finishing out Friday, January the 3rd, I'm going to try to do my show live tomorrow. I'm hoping that I can pull that off. But I really want to make sure I have a very stable internet connection before I do that. And I'm seeking that out today. But I'm in a spot where I'm going to be for the rest of my trip, and I wanted to make sure that I could do it beforehand. So tomorrow, we have Nadine at 9. We have a really big shoe with JR. We have me. And then we have International Flavor. We have The Eye of the Beholder with DJ Polly. Monday, Shield Maidens are coming on. A really big shoe, International Flavor, Jack's Car Show. Tuesday, January the 7th, a really big shoe and International Flavor. And Wednesday, we have the Damn Schwag with Jimmy Tebow, the Gabby Hayes Show, a really big shoe, International Flavor, and then Radio Free Missouri. Wednesday's a big day at Damn Radio. If you ever want to find the schedule, you go to damradio.com/schedule. You ever want to check out any of the current events or listen live, you go to the same place, damradio.com/live. And you can download the app and listen to it as well. Works all over the place, so keep on trucking and keep on trying. My name is Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor, the English version, coming to you recorded today from the country of Colombia. I challenge you to create your own opinions and create your own travels and decide what the truth is for yourself. Have a nice day, Missouri and the world.